You need to unmute.
How's that?
There you go.
Super. Yeah, 1 minute. So if the item is already on the mayor and city council's agenda, what are we doing today?
I think that's a different item on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, that's the floodplain fill.
Yeah.
Melanie wanted to get together and talk about other items for floodplain regulations.
Okay. All right. So what we can possibly delete that's conflicting with the new item. Robin. Hello, Robin.
Howdy, Joe.
You probably want your H Park stuff back, right?
I don't have to have it back, but if you want to bring it back, yeah, I'll take it. If you don't want to dispose of it.
I
It
could recycle it.
and before we changed the ordinance, it used to say I had to take them back. Now it
Yes.
just says I have to keep 2 copies. But so if you want to bring them back, that's fine. I just usually toss them in a can for recycling.
I could do that at home and save gas.
Yeah, because most of the time, some of the applicants you say, "Well, I want mine back." Well, okay. Well, if you want it back, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Okay.
Most of them don't anyway. So yeah, if you want to keep it, that's fine.
All right. I can handle it. Should somebody call Melanie?
Let me email her.
Is Anne Marie sitting on top of the BPW water tower?
Is it?
So I've reached out to Melanie. Hopefully she'll be with us in just a minute or two.
Is Bob Heffernan on this committee?
Not on this committee.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
Melanie and Joe.
Okay.
So I know we have a couple of
Okay. Because I was going to say he and Nancy
members
are both.
listening.
Okay. you're seeing the same thing I am.
Thank you.
And I just responded. Okay, so
It's better with my hair down.
just a quick explanation for the reason Janelle and I look like we're working the McDonald's drive-through is we frequently have people say, "Can you get closer to the mic? I can't hear you." So now we travel with Mike.
Here comes Melanie.
Sorry, I had technical difficulties at this end. Had to change computers. Are we all here?
We are all here, ready to go whenever you guys are.
Excellent. Let's go.
All right. So I know you guys wanted to, we've got the floodplain fill ordinance going through the process right now. And I know you guys wanted to take a larger look at the floodplain regulations ordinance. So I thought what we could do, like what we've been doing with a lot of the other subcommittees, is you've got a big section of code that you want to take a look at, maybe looking at it in section by section. It's a little bit more manageable, I think, that way. And then we can get a better grip as to what our big issues are, so we can focus on those more. So I know, Joe, you had a lot of questions and comments. Did you want to get going? Or Melanie, do you want to get going? Because I know Joe sent out a big thing about a lot of list of changes he wanted to make about like what section was most important to start focusing on, because some of these, remember, some of this work is going to require us to get FEMA, DEMA, potentially a consultant on board. So we want to bite off the things that maybe we can do without them. You know, we can. That's a good way to start on my perspective. But you know, you guys tell me what you guys want to focus on.
Sure. What, Joe's done a lot of work on this, so why don't we have Joe start?
Well, thank you. I'm looking at the floodplain ordinance section 19773. I've got 33 pages here. I mean, if you have it in front of you, I can, I'm old school. I did red line markups here. I can tell you what I have. Janelle's probably seen all these already, but if you want to pull up.
So I think a good way to start is you had a lot of comments at the beginning about just the general provisions. Do you want to focus there? You had a lot of concerns about definitions. Do you want to focus there? Is there a particular section that you wanted to focus on? Because yeah, the one you sent me was originally 44 pages because you included the floodplain originally, or the wetlands originally. So it stops a couple pages shy of that.
All right.
So I guess my question is, if there's stuff throughout, do we need to determine a scope of what degree of modification we're going to make to the ordinance, so then we can determine how to address it? Because if it's the whole thing, that's a bigger project than if it's, a little bit here.
Well, I think Joe had, from what I saw of Joe's markups, there were a lot of tweakings, mostly, I think, to the regs. I don't think there's any substantive change other than the fill issue. So
Okay.
I would take Janelle's suggestion, and maybe we work on the general provisions right now, see how far we get, and then perhaps go into the definitions if we need to.
The definitions are about 6 pages, and they basically have to be merged with the rest of all of our definitions have to be in one section. So if we just put the definitions aside right now and get to the little tweaks I have, starting with section A on the general provisions,
Okay,
right? General provisions, page 1, A and B, I have no comments, but on the 2 statement of purpose, line B reads, encourage the utilization of appropriate construction. I want to cross out encourage the utilization of and say, use appropriate construction practices. I mean,
You want it to be require the use of appropriate construction practices?
it's, is that so hard to believe? I mean, it's just 5 years ago, it's very wishy. Okay. And then that's B. C says minimize flooding of water supply. I'd like to take out minimize and say prevent flooding of water supply. Just let's be positive here. Let's not give them a wiggle room.
well, one thing that I thought on C is that, isn't it repeated in H, which says minimize damage to public facilities and other utilities such as water and sewer, gas mains, or water, gas and gas mains, electric, telephone, and sewer lines, streets and bridges.
That's true. It goes in more detail.
Yeah,
Good.
so it's as though we could eliminate,
Do you want to combine the two?
yeah.
Right. Let's take out C and then re-letter those. Item D is the one that gets to me because a lot of places we don't have any natural drainage. So I just like to take out maintain natural and just say improve drainage.
Well, I was thinking of expanding that to say maintain natural drainage and watersheds.
Well, and where there is natural drainage, I don't think that you want to, I think the idea of maintaining it is important. So while there are areas where there is not natural drainage to maintain, you also don't want it to be removed, the natural drainage features, streams, for
I
instance.
think the way this reads is like, if we have natural drainage, you need to maintain it. If there's not, then you have to do other things to address that.
How about maintain or maintain natural or improve drainage? I mean, a lot of times people look at, say, like in March, at quote, flooded land, and it's real flooded land, it's ponds, which are future mosquito ponds. So item D has to be improved.
Well, I think improve is a good word. And I would just like to insert also the watersheds, which is sort of implied if you say natural drainage, but I want to be explicit.
I guess the thing with improving drainage is, the floodplain is really more about maintaining the natural. Improving drainage isn't the purpose of the floodplain as much as it is the purpose of the stormwater management system, which they're separate.
Well, but if it's saying the natural improve the natural drainage,
Okay.
that's not saying the stormwater management.
Okay.
I would read it that way.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Right. Item E, about reducing financial burdens imposed on the community, government, blah, 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 and its residents by, I'm dropping discouraging and UN, and I'm going with by wise design and construction in areas subject to flooding. Now, if we're not developing in flooded areas, we could delete that. But I'm being positive by using wise design and construction in areas subject to flooding.
Sorry, I'm just reading it and for everybody who's listening, if you want to bring up the city's zoning code, we're in chapter 197, section 73. Because right now it says reduce financial burdens imposed on the community, its government units, as in its residents, by discouraging unwise design and construction in areas subject to flooding. So you wanted to say
I wanted to drop
financial burdens and it's
discouraging, drop UN,
by wise design
and just say construction
of developments in
And
areas.
maybe we could avoid.
Want development in there because I don't think a house would be considered I think you think bigger picture, bigger items for development, then a house could be, you don't typically think of a house as a development.
Right, it'd be any type of construction, not just a housing.
Right, so I think because you put in of development, I think if you wanted to say, I think you need a word between by and wise design and construction in areas subject to flooding.
By utilizing.
I think maybe we just say discouraging development in areas subject to flooding.
That's up to you guys, because a lot of the city is in floodplain and is developed in floodplain.
Well, that's why I would leave it as discouraging.
Right.
Because truly, we should be doing that if we're responsible.
So you just want to take out design, you just want unwise, you just want to by discouraging construction in areas subject to flooding.
Well, I would leave it as development. So discouraging development in areas subject to flooding. Joe, what do you think?
Well, the development was being added in. Because right now it says by discouraging unwise design and construction in areas subject to flooding.
My code says discouraging unwise design and construction of development in areas subject to flooding.
So I wanted to take those two words.
Okay, you wanted to take that out.
I wanted to delete those two words and make it sort of generic.
Well, that sort of implies, though, that we're letting construction and development occur in flood areas, flood-prone areas. And I think we do want to discourage that.
For instance, would this include repaving beach parking lots, all along the canal? Anything there? That's areas all subject to flooding. You want to tell people who own property along the canal they can't do anything?
So I think
I'm
maybe
discouraging development. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying discourage it.
So maybe we look at the bigger picture of if we're going down this road, what is the purpose of the changes you want to make in the floodplain regulations? Are we trying to just clean things up, make them more consistent, which is I think a lot of what Joe was saying, or do we want to take a stricter line and start like discouraging, eliminating development in the floodplain areas?
Well, I think we want to err on the side of safety and economics.
Well, if you're talking economics, you'd be opening the city city lawsuits from frustrated homeowners and property owners.
I'm just asking the questions.
Right. I'm saying discourage. I'm not saying eliminate that stuff.
This is where Robin will explain to them the perils of growth near the floodplains.
Right.
Put it on Robin's back. Janelle, you write it in.
I'll take care of it.
Super. Okay,
I'm making,
item F. Instead of saying the general public in the end, I just want to say City of Lewis. Everybody good with that?
I think when you say City of Lewis, it sort of says, oh, they'll pay for it. But if we say the general public, then it says, I'm paying for it. How does everyone else feel about that?
Janelle, you just muted yourself. We can't hear Janelle. I can't hear Janelle.
Yeah, Janelle,
how
what do
about
you
now?
think?
Wow.
Huh?
Okay.
Okay. Well, the general provisions in the zoning code says for the health, safety, and welfare of the general public.
But not at
So
the,
that's just kind of keeping in consistency, but if you want to change it, you can do that. But I also think it takes it a broader look as to the city's not just looking at itself, we're looking at a much larger whole of the community.
whatever you want, Janelle.
Just for clarification, I don't vote.
Melanie, general public or City of Lewis?
I would prefer general public, but I
Okay.
don't have, I'm not strong on that.
Okay, either way.
Right.
Item G,
Okay.
it says minimize prolonged business interruptions. Why not just say minimize business interruptions?
I think that's fine.
Minimize and prolong, see, they clash with each other. You want to do one. So let's just say minimize business interruptions.
Okay.
Thing on H, it says minimize damage. I'd rather prevent damage to public facilities, utilities, blah, blah, blah. So at H, I just want to say prevent damage.
I think that's good.
And then item I starts with the words reinforce that those who build and occupy. I want to say inform, whether it's through our codes, through our building officials, but inform those who build and occupy special flood hazards.
Maybe Robin can help with this. Robin? Hello?
And before Robin jumps in, remember, these are just the general statement of purpose items in the code, just to kind of give people background of why we have a floodplain regulation section.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was wondering if there is anything in the building code or somewhere else that requires that the city inform people who are building, either a replacement house or whatever in the floodplain, that in fact they are taking on, added risk and should assume responsibility for their actions. Is there anything or anywhere that they are informed of this? I mean, other than this line in the code. It almost seems as though, there should be something when they get a building permit, perhaps, that is a special, in bold red letters, you're building in the floodplain.
Yeah, read Bonnie's comment here. There's also a release, I believe, from the real estate offices too about the location, depending on the location. The real
Yeah,
estate is
the
that-
building permits will note whether or not you're in the floodplain because you're going to have to meet special flood requirements for construction. And then typically, if you're buying a house, I'm hoping you're going to realize and do your homework that you're building in a flood area. Homeowners, when buying a house, that is something they should be looking at because most of the time you're going to have to figure out if you need flood insurance or not.
Yeah.
And that's typically something you find out at the time of purchasing your home.
Yeah, you'll find out if you're in the flood zone by having bank-required flood insurance.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
all righty. Skipping down to K, it says provide flood storage and convenience functions of the floodplain are maintained. I want to add or improved to
I'm
that.
sorry, which one is that?
K isn't,
Okay.
okay,
As in kangaroo.
yes. Floodplain are maintained and add or improved.
And I'd like to add flood storage capacity, just the word capacity there.
Flood storage capacity, okay.
And I like and improved. That's good.
And then I have nothing to add to L, M, or N.
Okay.
And then I have nothing on 3 or 4, but if somebody of greater knowledge wants to review federal regulations and tables and sections, please feel free to do so.
Janelle, is there a local flood hazard map?
They would be on the FEMA maps.
No, it's something that the city is supposed to see under 4A4. It says the city of Lewis may identify and regulate new local flood hazard or ponding areas. These areas should be delineated and adopted on a local flood hazard map.
Yeah, we have not done that. We just adopted the FEMA maps.
Okay, so this is probably something that is on
That
the
allows
to-do
us
list.
to do something if we recognize something, and we'd have to do that in consultation with FEMA and get their approval and their recognition of those maps. But we have not done that because we rely on the FEMA maps. And I think Robin was nodding his head yes, that I was correct with that. And he just did another head nod in the affirmative.
Okay.
Well, should we eliminate number 4 then?
No, I wouldn't, because if there is something that does come up, we want that opportunity to be able to say yes.
You mean to do this local flood hazard map?
Yes.
Because you never know, we might, in between the FEMA flood maps being adopted in a LOMAR or a LONO, or there's a couple different letters of map revision or map amendment that you could be done. We could recognize there's an area that we need to pay special attention to based on a bunch of documentation that would get approved by FEMA in the interim between the adoption of the FEMA maps. So it just gives us an
Or
opportunity.
is it a local flood hazard area that's less than 100-year flood? Perhaps it's a 50-year flood, or no, it says even a ponding area.
Right, it's just something that would give us the ability to, if we know there's an issue, that we can look at different regulations and create a map for those specific areas. So I think leaving it in, I think, just gives us more flexibility and more opportunity if we ever need it.
Okay,
It doesn't do any harm. I think it would do more harm to remove it than to leave it.
okay.
Sounds good. Okay, skipping down to item number 6, interpretation. you have A, B, C, and D. And under D, where a provision of these regulations may in conflict with state or federal law, could we add county? State, county?
I would not, because they have no jurisdiction over the city of Lewis.
But they do reviews, Sussex County.
But not our reviews.
Oh.
The Sussex Conservation District, is that what you're thinking? Is not part of the county. It is an offshoot of actually DENREC, that is the designated stormwater management review for for Sussex County as a whole. It is not an offshoot. It is Sussex Conservation District has no connection with Sussex County. It's a separate standalone agency. Think of the Office of the State Fire Marshal, DELDOT. There's the Conservation District.
Okay.
It is not an offshoot of the county operations.
Sounds like it.
It is not. It's the same thing in Kent County and in Newcastle County. They just called them, because each county has their own for stormwater management. That's how they called them, what they named them. But they are not associated with the counties. They are actually offshoots, independent agencies off of DENREC.
All righty. Nothing on D then. Okay. On the bottom of that page is definitions. And that's like the next 5 or 6 pages is definitions. And they had to be merged with the whole section, the future section that combines and condenses and puts it all in one place under definitions. So that's a whole.
So it's a project in and of itself.
Yes.
To create its own, to take all the definitions out of the individual sections of code and put them in actually the definition section and make sure we don't have any overlaps. But I also think if we're going to start identifying any changes to the definitions, we definitely run those through Robin and DEMA and FEMA. Because I think the one thing we don't want to do is start messing with the definition that then gets us out of compliance with FEMA and our flood regulations. Because great work on Robin's part was just doing our update, is getting our number and our flood levels better. So our people's flood insurance should be coming down a little bit. So, we want to make sure we stay on the good side.
Yes, yes.
I know that was a little wordy, and a little weird, but I think if we're going to start looking at definitions, I think we definitely get Robin and DEMA and FEMA and DENREC involved, because we want to make sure.
The lawyers too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, when they did these definitions, they are basically, I think they tried to line them up word for word with what's in the FEMA regulations.
Okay.
So we're not differing from what so I think, we don't want to, maybe moving them, but I think the wording, we should probably at least keep the same.
I would make an urging that we leave them where they are, because having been a practitioner, one of the things that's really frustrating is having to reference different sections of the code to understand your section. And so leaving the definitions that are relevant to floodplain in the floodplain section makes them very easy to find and to reference. Whereas if they're in the general definitions of the code, you're constantly referring back and forth, and it becomes much more difficult to find what you're looking for. So I would make a pitch for leaving them where they are.
I agree.
We went through this a couple of years ago, and you probably get to bring it up with Kay and Drew, because one of the problems with our code was that we had definitions all over the place. We were trying to put them in one section. So that's a future project again.
Fine.
Right.
Okay.
Nothing on the next couple of pages. I don't know if anybody else does, until I get to let's see, page 15. regarding the application.
Can you reference the number and the letter, please? Because I know we got a bunch of people online listening, and also help staff keep up.
Well, if you go, definitions end at letter C, administration, designation of the floodplain administrator. And then I have administrator duties, runs through the whole alphabet, goes to permits required, section item 3, application required, item 4, and then under application required, item number 2, elevation. It says something to the effect, well, it says something that says, referencing the datum on the flood insurance rate map and an elevation certificate that shows the ground elevation. It's not really an elevation certificate, which is something you do at the end of the project, and you get the finished floor grade.
So typically in floodplain, you do 2 elevation certificates, one at the beginning showing what it is and how that you're going to build out of it, and then one at the end before your certificate of occupancy showing that you comply with it. Am I right, Robin? Because that's typically when I'm everywhere else I've worked. You're doing 2 elevation certificates, one for the submission of the permit and one before the CO to make sure you built what you were supposed to.
The city requires 3.
There you go.
That's an additional requirement, regulatory requirement. So we get extra points for that because we asked 3. You have 1 at the, what they call a construction drawing elevation certificate. What that does is gives you all the proposed elevations of what the house is going to be, the crawl space, the first floor, all your equipment, because we base our review off of that to make sure you're going to be compliant. It also shows the flood opening that you're going to have if required. So it's not just the elevation of the floor. There's a lag, the lowest adjacent grade. There's a hag, the highest adjacent grade. There's grade next to the stairs. There's also your equipment elevation. After you do the foundation and the first floor, before you put the walls on the first floor, we require another one. That's under construction elevation certificate. That's to ensure that the floor is going to be at the right height before somebody puts walls up in the second floor and then we tell them to tear it back down. So we require that extra one. Then at the end, it's a final construction elevation certificate, which we ensure that the finished house and the elevations are called correct and compliant.
Thank you. News to me. Well, that carries on down to item 5. Goes into the elevation certificates. And you got it well covered. All right.
Could we go back to number 4?
Okay.
Janelle, what did we decide to change the number of lots or the acreage where floodplain was going to be delineated?
I'm not aware of having a conversation about the acreage. But if you want to add something, we can definitely look at that.
Well, 50 lots seems like a lot of lots.
I think it's the standard language in the regulations. I'm not saying not change it, but that's the standard language.
Okay, so that's from FEMA.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So could we make that 5 lots?
Would you rather just make it part of our major subdivision? That you need to do that? Because you could do a minor subdivision. You're still gonna have to comply, construction's still gonna have to apply with floodplain regulations. I'm gonna look for Robin for advice there. if we're looking to change the number. What page are you on, Melanie? I just want to make sure, again, everybody keeping up and,
It's
I'm on
page,
14 is where I'm at. I don't know if that's correct. I mean, I printed out, so I might be printing out different than what's on the screen.
I've got it printed out 15.
it's 19781. Is that the page number?
no, that's a section number. So we shouldn't be in 19781, we're in 19773, which is all floodplain.
Well, the bottom of the page says 19781 in my book. I don't see a page number
Oh,
anywhere.
okay.
A minor subdivision is what, 3 lots, 4 lots?
No, it can be 5, but it also depends on whether or not you're going to be doing infrastructure. You have to extend utilities or provide a new road, you're a major subdivision. It doesn't even matter. It could be a 2-lot and it could be a major subdivision if you have to provide a road or extend utilities.
Mm-hmm. I'm just concerned that, we do have a lot of floodplain here, and I would think a minor subdivision should still be subject to it.
And again, that's just referencing if a base flood elevation is not shown. So if we have base flood elevations, they don't have to do the additional hydraulic survey and study.
Right.
And we have a lot of places that we have the base flood elevations identified. I'm not too aware of places we don't have them. And I think Robin's trying to think of that one right now.
Yeah, I'm almost, I can't 100% guarantee, but I think we've got everything we've got a base flood elevation. I can.
For most everything.
Yeah,
I mean, there's probably something
here.
here or there. So based on that statement from Robin, I think we're actually good for that one, because it's more or less saying if you don't have the base flood elevations for the firm maps, then you have to do additional engineering analysis and hydraulic studies, but we have the base flood elevations for everything, pretty much everything.
We're good with that? We move on?
Well, I'd like to say for development proposals, period, and not quantify it.
Robin, is that okay? Do you have any issues, see any issues with that? Because we're making it more strict.
All it would be is if we have anybody that wants to build on any lot where it's not designated as a base flood elevation, they have to do a study.
That is the proposal.
If that's what I'm.
Yes.
But you're saying you're 99% sure that the information is available.
Yeah, again, I'd have to look just to verify, but I think we've got a base flood for, I think, every bit of our community.
Robin, how about areas that are listed as potential annexation areas, like down the road, so to speak, that are outside of city limits right now?
I don't know about those because I usually don't.
You know, go there, yeah.
Yeah. But again, the maps were redone back in 2015. So that's probably a pretty good indication that they've covered a lot of areas. And again, if they were the older maps from the 80s or something like that, maybe I could see there is some, missed areas. Again, there's no guarantee that there's not. But I can't say for the annexed areas.
Right. Janelle, I could go either way. Be
Well,
trimming
I'll
it down.
write it up and then we can discuss it at a future date and see what we think. And,
Okay,
you know, Robin, if you want to reach out and make sure we write it up that it doesn't cause any trouble, so we can just double check everything.
okay.
Moving on to the next page, they're dealing with work on existing structures, repairs, alterations. It looks like they're reviewing storm damage and substantial improvements, things like that. I haven't made any comments to that. I don't know if people want to.
Robin, do you have any suggestions?
Are you talking about like 7A and B?
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
Work on existing structures.
I think this is, again, probably overall just the standard language. That, you know, again, we have to determine, you know, we got to get documentation. We require either an appraisal done, because again, we've gone over and above of just the standard permit that we have a 10-year cumulative period for work. So not only is it the permit of the day, it's the permit for the past 10 years that get added into the values that we use to determine the substantial damage, substantial improvement.
can you see any improvements to the language here, though? Anything that you've experienced is a problem?
No, not really.
Okay. Moving on to under certificates, certifications, I should say. And down to item number B, right to submit new technical data. That the applicant has the right to seek a letter of map change and submit new technical data to FEMA regarding base maps. Is that, Robin, something that ever happens?
I'm don't know where you're at, Joe.
It's
Okay,
8B. It's page 82, if you've got the old one, and it's talking about people having the ability to seek a letter of map change or a letter of map amendment, which I've seen people do.
Well, I'm gonna stop you, Janelle. Unless my 8B says certification that flood openings do not meet minimum requirements.
Nope. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not 8B. It's letter B. Keep going to the next page and the other B. This one it goes letter number, and this is like,
This is very confusing.
yeah, the way, there should be some extra numbers in here somewhere. But
Yeah.
But you said right to submit new technical data.
Yes.
The right to see.
correct, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Roman letter B, yeah.
And they do that sometimes. We have some of the areas near Lightship Lane. Were in 15 got added to the flood hazard area. But the owners have surveys with topographical information that says that they are above the base flood elevation currently.
Okay,
So they submit that survey showing the numbers that says if they've got a base flood elevation of 7 on the map, but their current grade is at 7.5. They submit that, and then that's when the letters of map amendment come in, the change, and then that's the technical data that they can submit.
and that gets a better insurance rate.
Yeah, and that gets reviewed by FEMA. And FEMA sends out the letter map amendments and stuff like that to say, yes, you're correct.
Okay. All
And that
right.
does require engineering. It's not just somebody going, hey, this is what it is. There's data and documentation that has to be supported with the request.
Okay. Ready. I have nothing for the next couple of pages.
Melanie, how about you?
No,
Until I get to the paragraph that starts with the number 8, flood insurance rate map.
Page 84, Robin and Anne Marie.
I don't have pages. I'm looking at Joe's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had to get the big book out.
Page 20 for me.
You said H,
8,
8, number 8.
8.
Flood
like the
insurance.
number of legs on a spider.
Yep.
This is the question I had for Janelle about floodplain versus floodway boundaries. That's under 8 and goes down to B and C about using the terms floodway. B and C goes to use the term floodway as opposed to floodplain. And maybe it's just me being confused, but, you know, we talk about being in 100-year floodplains. We don't talk about being in the floodway. So,
But the
So-
floodway is a different area on the map,
Correct.
so it does need to be, it's more restrictive than the floodplain.
Correct. And if we annex, there's a potential that we could annex areas with floodway. There is no current floodway within the city boundaries, but in our annexation areas, there is potential for floodway because just outside the boundary, there are some floodways in there. So, and again, we're just using FEMA wording for that.
so we could go either way and keep it both, keep them both for now.
I think that would just be safer.
Okay.
yeah, it's in the definitions and it is, I think the area where the water's flowing. So it's like the area of a stream is a floodway, but the floodplain can be much bigger than the floodway.
Right.
And they're in more of riverine areas instead of coastal.
Right, right.
Okay. All right. The next comments I have are moving on to the next page under section D as in David. We go through 1 and 2, and then under 2, we have A, B, C. And under B, it says,
So
also-
just, can I stop you 1 second? We're in requirements in all special flood hazard areas is the letter D that we're looking at.
that's the title, correct?
Yes.
And under subdivision developments number 2, under there is the letter B. And it goes on to say, all subdivisions and development proposals shall have utilities and facilities such as sewer, water, gas, electrical, water systems. It says, located and constructed to minimize flood damage. Why can't we just say water systems designed to minimize flood damage? And then below that, under C, all subdivisions and development proposals shall have adequate drainage designed, not provided, designed to reduce exposure to flood damage. It has to be reviewed. It has to be engineered. It has to be reviewed and then approved. You're not just locating them and building them. You're running them up the flagpole, okay? So these systems have to be designed and approved and then built.
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay.
Okay, Joe, can you send me that verbiage so I can take a look at that, please?
Okay. I will get that to you. And then further down that page, item number 3, protection of water supply and sanitary source systems. It's under A, below that, new and replacement water supply systems shall be designed to not minimize or eliminate infiltration, but just drop the word minimize. We don't want to minimize infiltration of the system. We want to eliminate infiltration. Same thing below that in section B, new and replacement sanitary sewer systems shall be designed not to minimize or eliminate, but just designed to eliminate. So want to drop the two words minimize or under A and B in that. We want to eliminate infiltration. Sort of giving a wiggle room to pollute the water systems.
Well, I think in general, again, we're talking city. These regulations are throughout the whole country, where when you're talking about water supply and sanitary systems, you're talking about well and septics also. So again, I think that's where the minimize. If you got a septic tank, it's going to be hard to eliminate. I get it with our system because it's a public system. It's like a water system. It's easier
Right.
to eliminate that. But I think these two are just general, not specific to Lewis or to a municipality. And
Right.
this wording that's in there, but I think that's when they talk about sewer systems, they're not just talking about our sewer plant, they're talking about also. So I think it's probably just a standard that words
Generic.
talk about minimize.
But
Again, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but
yeah,
I think in general terms, that's why the word minimize was in there.
okay. But I'd like to eliminate that. Yeah,
You would like to eliminate the word minimize.
correct, yes.
There we go. All right,
Okay.
next one.
Oh, could I go back up
Okay.
to D2D?
We
Where
will make
again,
that
it's-
reflect the other as, yes, we will do that. So just everybody, that one is also referencing the 50 lots and the 5 acres for subdivision. We're to make that reference the same.
right.
Okay. All right, on the next page, our favorite subject, fill, is item number 5. Sort of describes disposal of fill, that's A, and then B, not permitted place for structural support. And letter C goes on to say, fill placed for a purpose other than to support a building. And I put for example, grading. People wonder why they want fill, but it was to grade the site shall be compacted for stability, all that stuff. So I'm just in parentheses saying, i.e. grading. I don't know if it's meaningful.
But it could also be the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For new roads, okay.
And remember, this is the section we have, the commission just recommended approval of a new section regarding floodplain fill. So I
Right.
don't know if we want to get too
Right.
involved in this one and see what happens with the outcome of that. And then if we need to come back and change that, I think that would be a better take on that, because we've already got a section of code in the.
Well, I think we need to circle B then also, not just C, because if we're going to go with no net loss, then we're going to say fill shall not be permitted to be placed for the purpose of constructing a road or supporting a building or structure.
Yeah, I think right now we don't touch fill right now until we see what happens with the ordinance that's going through the process, because that's going to give us, I think, if it doesn't pass or something changes or it gets approved, then I think that gives us a way to start working backwards. But I don't want to start messing with something that we've already got something in the pipeline that's very close to going to a public hearing.
Okay.
I just think it's a little bit cleaner right now.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So is that like a good spot to focus on, get those changes? Because I think we could literally go through the entire rest of the code. But I think, are those like good priorities that we want to focus on, get those looking at and work on those? Or do you want to keep going?
Have we used up our time?
No, I just want to make sure it's like, again, when we started, we want to make sure like what are our priorities? What do we want to focus on? So we can make sure this is manageable, that we're not like getting into too much that is going to require, lots of back and forth with FEMA and DENREC and.
Well, I have just a few more comments here and a few more pages. I mean,
Okay.
very minimal.
All right, let's keep going then. Are you good with that, Melanie?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right,
The
Joe,
other
where
big
you-
section is coming up,
All right.
so
All right.
at least the one that I would like to address, but if Joe's got some minor stuff, let's finish it.
It goes on historic structures, no comments, recreational vehicles, gas and liquid storage tanks, manufactured homes. I have no comments there. Critical facilities, number 10. I'm not the expert on that. And then it goes under critical facilities, goes to E, requirements about flood hazard zone. Again, it goes down 1, 2, 3, and it goes about development in floodways, including fill in the floodways. So that's just something I want to flag that, again, it's to be addressed at a different point. I just flagged the words fill in the floodways.
Yeah, I think Janelle's got a good point that we should wait and see what happens at the council before we address this section.
Yeah, the same thing. There's other comments about floodways there.
And again, floodways, currently none in the city, but I think if we just leave it, because if property is annexed, then we have rules that apply to it, then we don't have to go back and change it if we take it out.
Yeah.
Save us some work in the future.
Yeah. And then this goes on to B, development in areas of flood elevations but no floodways, because that goes on, that's rather a large paragraph. It goes on to say, proposed development activities may be permitted if it will not increase base flood elevations more than 1 foot at any point. Now, I made a side comment here about, I'm right near New Road, and DelDOT's planning to raise the bridge over Canary Creek 7 feet, and they're going to be raising the ramps. And on my side of the creek, there's going to be 7 feet of fill tapering about 200 feet down to the existing grade. They're going from Canary Creek to where Park Avenue goes into the park. All that roadway is going to be tapered up and filled. So there's a vast amount of fill going into the floodplain, courtesy of DelDOT. I'm sure they can do what they want, but that's just an example of fill in the floodplain that's going to be happening here.
And again, they'll have to get the appropriate permits and they'll have to offset and they'll have to deal with the drainage and they'll have to comply with, they actually have high regulations to address as
My
well.
understanding is they'll increase the carrying capacity there with bigger pipes or culvert or whatever, however they're going to handle the passage of the water. Is that it's going to increase the capacity of flow through that system.
Yeah, they're taking out the sidewalls. Right now, they taper down. They put a small bridge and built out the sides. They are hopefully going, and I've seen the preliminary design, knocking out those concrete sidewalls and opening up the creek to permit flow to and fro. So that should
Right.
get better.
Right, and again, think of that, DELDOT has federal EPA regulations they have to go through.
Right.
So they will definitely be having to address all of these. So what's your next section that you've got?
My next section is,
And we haven't skipped anything you've got, Melanie, have we?
Well, again, I think so much of this is going to be covered with Phil. No pun intended.
No, understood.
that's really deep, yeah. Mhm. Oh. Anyway, I skipped a couple of pages until we get down to the variances, letter G. I mean, the Board of Adjustment, that language of the Board of Adjustment is a whole can of worms. I mean, it's just, I want to say, loaded against the property owner trying to get a variance. So it's just, I don't know how I got through the first time, but I would like to stop here and put the Board of Adjustment language as a future subject too.
Okay.
Then I'm done.
Okay,
Melanie, did you have anything?
nope,
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, so I've got a laundry list of items to look at for the purpose, and then a number of items clean up in the rest of the code. If you guys took any notes, if you want to get them to me, that way then I can make sure I did take notes, and I was taking other notes. Make sure I don't forget anything. And then when do you guys want to get? You guys want to get back together in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to start looking at these changes? Can't be next week.
When Planning Commission is next week, isn't it?
Planning Commission is the 21st.
It's the 21st. Oh, okay.
21st. It's late this month.
Uh-huh. So if it's 2 weeks from today is the 7th, that would be,
The 21st. I'm not available that day.
yeah, why don't we do it a month from today then?
November?
Or the 28th of
We can
October?
do the 28th.
28th is good for me.
Okay.
What time do you guys want?
Should we do 3 instead of 4? Is that,
3 is good.
Robin, are you good at 3?
As of right now, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes,
send-
sometimes at the end of the month, my heating and air is going to get replaced, so I'm not sure when that is yet. So,
Okay.
but right now, I'm free.
Good. All right. So I'll set it up for the 28th at 3. I will get an agenda posted, and the Zoom link will be on that agenda. And again, please send me your comments, the ideas that you had, just in case I missed anything. And then I'll work on getting revisions back to you guys so we can discuss them at the next meeting.
Right.
okay, great.
Okay.
Right.
Nothing else. Everybody have a great rest of your evening.
You too.
Right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.